Welcome back everyone, my name is Ian Matthews, this is Tango Tasters, and today's video is going to be looking at a more hands-on way of engaging students in something that might be otherwise quite difficult to comprehend. Long story short, working recently with a university, teacher trainee university, and they were working on a module with their students that was about the differences between a Victorian classroom and a more modern classroom. And it's quite difficult, beyond this is what a Victorian classroom looked like, to really help learners, the students, get a grip on the major differences. So they'd be putting out PowerPoint saying, what do you see as the difference between this and that? How would you see by rote learning versus constructivist learning and so on? Instead of that though, I want to be able to help these guys to feel a more immediate impact with what it is that they were studying. So instead of just throwing resources at them first, I started off with this. I effectively went, okay, here is a picture of a Victorian classroom. In groups, in pairs, I want you to identify the three most telling things that seem different between a class like this and a classroom of today. And when we collaborate up with Tango, the idea was for them to be able to write down the three things that would appeal to them, or would appear most relevant to them, and send them up. And they were pulling back things like, they were noticing that there was quite a wide range of age ranges within this class, between the girls in the class. The fact that it was all girls, the fact that they seemed to be doing needlework, there's lots of them packed in. There are even things on the boards around the classroom that seem to suggest they were involving themselves with more, how do I say, look at the bananas, let's say. The bananas to these guys would have probably seemed quite exotic, right? Because it's not a common fruit to have around at that time. So they've actually got entire displays seemingly dedicated to bananas and what they're like. They have instructions at the back of the classroom that talk about punctuality, good conduct and cleanliness. And it seems a far more rigid environment than perhaps we have today. Now, you could argue that having a camera pointed at you in modern times is bad enough. I can vouch for that now. But if we're talking about people who are not used to seeing them, it is going to make them act slightly differently, shall we say. But although my learners in the present day would be sending all these ideas up to us at the board, and I'd still be using this PowerPoint that we'd had from the lesson, which was what was life like for Victorian school children from historic England, and we're still going through this is what the classroom like, this is what's, it's the same thing, but it's done in a more immediate way, hopefully an easy way to make, and something that allows a more personalised approach, that there isn't a right or wrong answer that we do in a group, they're just going to send me their answers as we go. What I'm also going to be able to do though, if I swipe to a different page, I've used the same background on the second page, but in this one I've just got a big apple in the middle. And that's a PNG I've taken from content and searching from Apple PNG. And it represents one of the Victorian lessons that this module would be looking at. So rather than again saying that in Victorian times classes would have been done like this, I'm going to do the lesson. I'm going to say to the learners, okay, on the screen you can see that there is an apple. Describe the apple for me. And again, if we can collaborate with the screen, they might write something. But I'd say I want them to describe its features. So they'd be saying things like, it is green, it is spherical, it is, it looks like it's got some texture to it, and so on. Then I'd ask them about the qualities of it. And again, they're writing stuff down. And you could argue that this is a literature element, or at least a language acquisition element of a lesson, literacy. And they'd be sending up their ideas about that, and I can then assess that as I go. But in the case of what I'm trying to do in this sense is teach the teachers how the different patterns of styles of learning are, then they're seeing that this is quite a rigid approach to doing it. They've sent all my information. Then I go, okay, what you've just done, I'll move that out of the way, is in a Word document I've written down the information on an object lesson on apples that came from British Schools Museum. And if I'm pronouncing this right, the Pestalozzian School, Cheam in Surrey, in 1873, had information on this lesson and how it should be taught. So it went like this: an apple has parts, identify the parts. So it is following what I just did. And the expectation was that learners would be able to identify the eye, core, pips, peel, pulp, juice, and so forth. Once you've got that, they'd be asked to go on to its qualities, like I did, which was it is bright, it is odorous, coloured, and so forth. Then it's a case of moving inside. What might the pips be like, and so on. It ended by them going, okay, now we have some words. I want you to work on what these mean. And the remarks that then would derive from it, from the teacher, would be, okay, because you said spherical, I'd like you to think of similar terminations, such as conical, cylindrical, critical, and so on, as it says there. But the more specific the example that I'd been given, or been getting from the students, would be proof that, if anything, if however difficult they have found it, well, I can say that's how difficult these guys would have probably found it. Or if these guys could do it better than perhaps we can now do it in today's learning environments, what does that say about the different environments? What do we tend to value more in both environments? Can you see how the point of this is then, via very specific, easy to bring in things, a background, an apple, a Word document followed by my original module resource, I don't need a lot to be able to really engage the students to think about what it is that the differences might be, not just in a descriptive sense, but a more empathetic one as well.